Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. This is your co-host Adam Schrader here with Naresh Vissa. And once again, for the final show of the week, we are joined by CPA, PFS, AIFA member Wayne B Titus III. Wayne is the founder of AMD Financial and AMDG Business Advisory Services. We have talked to him before about kind of entrepreneurialism and kind of what businesses to start. And today we're going to start delving a little more into kind of the CARES Act and unemployment and all of the incredible things that are going on right now in terms of stimulating the economy. Wayne is the best-selling author of The Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Well-Being. So Wayne, you've talked in this conversation a bit about, talk to your lawyer, talk to your CPA. How do you know if you're getting a good one? I have a guy that I've used the last couple of years. I pay him to do our taxes. He's from the area. I don't know if he's good or not. I just know he's done my taxes. I've paid him. I haven't gotten audited. So great, I guess. How do you know if you're getting a good one or you're getting a crap one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the interesting thing is entrepreneurs don't know what they don't know about the integration of tax financial investment strategies. That's why I think, my book answers a lot of those questions and provides a lot of stories about, why it's important to have a good advisor and what that looks like. To me, there's three kinds of advisors. The advisor that's the paternalistic one that says, here's what you should do, and they just tell you what to do. There's the informative advisor that you ask them a question and they say, well, here's all the information about that. You can decide. And they don't really give you much guidance. They're informative, right? So you've got the paternalistic, you've got the informative. What I think most entrepreneurs really can benefit from is an advisor that's an interpretive advisor, somebody that's going to walk with you in this journey, right? And help you understand the things that you don't see or know about, right? It's kind of like your business coach might open your eyes to other things, but this person is interpretive. They know and understand what your specific situation is. They help you filter through the noise and they present to you, hey, here are the things that we think you should consider, A, B, and C. We think B is the best because of all these other things you've just told us, or you've told us over the years, or we know about you and your business and the direction you want to go. And they make a recommendation. They help you come to conclusion quickly. And so I think that's the thing that actually is lacking out there is advisors. I'm a CPA, and I'm very critical of my profession when there's CPAs out there that all they really do is focus on compliance and do taxes. But if their entrepreneurial clients need the guidance, they're not really providing the guidance. They're just doing the tax returns or just doing the bookkeeping. Need to understand the integration aspects of integrating tax, financial, and investment strategy and why that's important. So I don't know if you guys are doing a good job or not. I do know that if they're not talking with you about what's going on right now with the CARES Act and helping you understand these things, you should be asking yourself, what am I getting out of this relationship, right? You need to have somebody that's looking out for your best interest. And if they're not helping you identify, these things up front, maybe you should be looking for a different advisor. Not you specifically, Adam, but, just in general, what are you getting out of that relationship? Should you be getting more?
Well, I'll tell you my litmus test that I used 3-4 years ago when these cryptocurrency markets were going wild. When I started interviewing CPAs, and if they had no idea what cryptocurrency even was and what the tax code said on it or what Congress was debating about it, then I just kind of wrote them off because they're not staying up to date on what's going on in the news. And look, if you make a lot of money on cryptocurrency, your CPA is going to have to account for that. And if they don't know how to do it, if they're going to wait until the last minute on April 14th to start researching it and get it done, then that kind of tells me that they're lagging and that they're behind. And there are other litmus tests that I've used. If I only hear from my accountant on April 10th of every year and I never hear from them the rest of the 360 days or so, then that's another red flag, at least for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good litmus test. I mean, cryptocurrency is something that's it's been in the news for quite some time. It's taxed differently than other assets. There's a lot of significantly different things. Now, cutting everybody in the CPA world a break, this is a developing area, and actually, the Internal Revenue Service has, up until the last year and a half or so, they've been much more definitive on guidance on how things were going to be treated. So, sometimes it's difficult to stay on the bleeding edge of all of that. But in all fairness, there are things that you can stay up to speed on, and you need to. I think if you're gonna provide guidance on these kinds of subjects, you just got to stay up to speed.
Yeah, Wayne, we've talked about the DBAs. How about just kind of the independent consultants, independent contractors, gig workers, freelancers? I feel like these individuals have kind of gotten left out when it comes to benefits, when it comes like the PPP, unemployment. Tell us what we need to know about these. Really, I think the fastest growing segment of the workforce.
Yeah. Well, the CARES Act was just published, not even a month ago. And there's 868 pages of material. I didn't read all of it, but I read a lot of it. And there's a whole section that related to business entities. There's a whole section that talks about individuals, contractors, self-employeds, and others. And then there's a whole other section that talks about, other benefits. And we did some webcasts over the last few weeks. You can get those webcasts at our blog on my business website, amdgservices.com, if you want to see those. But specifically, as it relates to unemployment, there are benefits in the CARES Act to help self-employed, 1099 contractors, and gig workers specifically, and people that wouldn't otherwise be eligible for unemployment because of a COVID-related circumstance. And it doesn't mean you have to have had COVID. I had a conference with a client just yesterday. She quit her job to pull her mother out of a nursing home that had 10 cases of COVID, and she is now staying at home with her mother to take care of her, so she's not working. And I said to her husband, she is eligible for unemployment and for pandemic unemployment assistance, which is an additional $600 a week. So she could receive, up in the state of Michigan, normal unemployment up to $362 a week plus $600 a week for this extra amount through the end of July. Her unemployment benefits could go 39 weeks, but the $600 a month really only goes through the end of July. That same benefit is applicable to self-employed, contractors, and gig workers. You have to apply through your state website, and the states are implementing this in their own ways, and they're doing it, some of them more quickly than others. Michigan was probably on the front end of implementing this, and we've been taking applications for that for now 2 weeks for self-employed, 1099, and gig workers. So you may not be eligible for normal unemployment, and you may actually get a low amount. You're going to have to provide evidence of what your income was. So if you had a 1099, you're going to have to probably submit that. If you got paid and you have a self-employed business and you're filing a Schedule C, you might have to provide copies of your tax return. So there may be some hoops that you got to jump through, but you're absolutely potentially, if you had a reduction in hours or a reduction of income, you have the ability to sign up for these benefits. And you might not end up getting the unemployment benefit of up to, in Michigan, up to $362. Maybe that's zero because you still have some money coming in, but you may be eligible for that additional $600 a week.
So could this be like if you were in sales, like one of my clients, he's in sales, but it's like a foreign car parts. And so his sales had plummeted down to 5% of what they were a year ago. Is that something that you could go into the unemployment and the CARES stuff for, or?
Yeah, absolutely. You could. And now each state is going to implement their own program, but they generally have to follow the federal guidelines. And the federal guideline says you have to be eligible for at least $1 worth of unemployment in your state. So let's say your friend is still getting some income and it's more than what he would get under normal unemployment. So maybe he doesn't get that part, but he's still eligible for the $600 a week.
Yeah. Okay.
On top of that. So it's still worth making the application. And if you get denied, that doesn't mean you're not going to get the benefit. Make sure you make application and you put the date in which that happened, because they are looking backwards a little bit. But get the claim in now to whatever date that started. And then if you have to make a phone call and follow up and pursue this, then make sure you get on the phones and you do that. In Michigan, they quadrupled the number of people in the unemployment agency office to try to handle all the volume of calls. They installed extra servers so that they could manage the applications. And it hasn't gone off without a hitch, but they're doing the best they can. Like you said at the beginning of the broadcast, 24% or higher unemployment. The governments are trying to do what they can to get these benefits out in the hands of the people that need it. And that includes 1099s, contractors, self-employeds.
Well, I'm glad that they're making an attempt to help these workers out now. But before the virus hit, I felt, I could be completely wrong here, but I would hear from these freelancers, independent contractors, how they've basically been forgotten because they couldn't file for unemployment for whatever reason. If their list of clients went down, or if they weren't making more than X amount of dollars per month, usually it would be a couple of $100s a month. So what do you know about how the government and the IRS treated them previously?
Yeah, a lot of times people don't know this, but as a self-employed individual, you can pay into the unemployment fund and you can get coverage for unemployment. But you can also, in most states, opt out of this. And a lot of people don't want to incur the cost of paying for unemployment for themselves because they just figure they're self-employed, right? Why pay for unemployment insurance? So many times people have opted out and not really understood that they've cut out the opportunity to file for unemployment. Because under normal circumstances, unemployment is not provided for self-employed individuals if they're not paying into the unemployment agency. And you do that through payroll. So if that's maybe another reason why, you do that from an S Corp. You file as an S Corp and you pay yourself W-2 wages, then you would basically you could pay into the unemployment system and have that protection.
We were just talking about what all the government's trying to do with the PPP and everything. What do you need? What kind of corporation or what kind of incorporation do you need to be eligible for, getting these business loans from the PPP?
Yeah, the Paycheck Protection Program is typically going to be for companies that have payroll, right? Typically, it's what it's calculated on. So if you don't have payroll in your organization, then the PPP is probably not going to be for you. If you do have payroll, then my businesses, as an example, I have one business is a partnership. I get a K-1 out of that. I had to file for the PPP in my business, and I had to file for the PPP for myself personally because I get a K-1. I'm self-employed. So I had to actually make two applications to make sure that the payroll and my draw as a partner, guaranteed payments, were covered. So a lot of people might find that they actually may have to make multiple applications depending upon the businesses that they own. If you're self-employed, it's the same thing. You have to apply in your name, not, because your business is you, and you file a tax return as documentation for the PPP.
Wayne, did you get approved and funded?
I did. I have multiple businesses and I have different business partners, and not all of my business partners got funded on this, but, I've got a tax and accounting business, I've got my wealth management business, and then, myself personally. So I had to put in 3 applications for that. Now, you can't double dip. You have to actually disclose that you own these different entities, and you can't include payroll. As a business owner, they limit the amount of payroll that you can actually include in the calculation. So it's a fairly small amount. But the bottom line is, you have to go through and apply for it, the proper way. And you may have to, as a self-employed person, you may have to do this individually.
So if you have a DBA, if any of our listeners had a DBA or something like that, or was working as a sole proprietor, this wouldn't be something that they would be eligible to do, right?
They could be eligible for it. Whether it makes sense for them to make application here depends on how much income was. So self-employed individuals are limited to $100,000. So if you earn more than $100,000, you could only consider $100,000 in the calculation. You'd have your application be about $22,000 on a $100,000 salary or income. And then in essence, you could use that, as a loan, or if you're going to use it for payroll, then you can actually apply for forgiveness and not have to pay that back. So there's other aspects of the program on whether you just keep it as a loan for 2 years at 1% or whether you actually use it for payroll and then pay it back. It depends on what your business purpose needs are. So if you're self-employed and you only earned a couple $1,000s for the year, it doesn't make sense to do a PPP. You'd be better off going on the self-employed unemployment program and picking up the extra $600 a week.
a lot of our listeners' cases, Wayne, they have like one-person company. So they do have payrolls, but they're just paying themselves. So are those individuals with payroll but just one employee, or are they eligible? And if they are eligible, that's one thing to be eligible. It's a completely other thing to actually get funded, to actually get approved by your bank or business bank or the SBA and get funded.
Yeah. So if you're an employee of your company, so in essence, you've got an LLC that's probably an S Corp tax return, you're getting a W-2, you can file in the name of your company. And that's what most banks are best suited to understand. What I found is not every bank understands this program the same way. So there's a lot of confusion about how you make application and whether or not you're doing it properly. So I'll give you a quick example. My bank wouldn't accept my inclusion of guaranteed payments in my business's application. And consequently, it forced me and my two partners to make application for ourselves, right? But a colleague who's a CPA in Missouri, his bank allowed him to do that, right? So there's a lot of confusion over the program. But the bottom line is, if you get a W-2 from your business, that's a really easy application to make with your bank. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to get accepted, but it's a little bit easier than if you're dealing with a bank that's got to understand that you're allowed to file as a self-employed person and that you're filing as an individual. I had a client this morning I talked to, their bank wouldn't accept their tax returns in their application on, actually 2 clients in the last 2 days that wouldn't accept the application, from themselves being self-employed, because that's the guideline that they set up. It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, you were mentioning there about your bank's interpreting it differently. You also have to hope, based on what I've heard, that your bank gives out the money legally in the first come first serve basis.
Yeah, that's right, and that's happening. Yeah, it's now all first come first serve now, and we've got the second round of funding coming through, and there's a number of applications that are still on, that are still out there.
Talking about the different banks, look, this entire process, I've gone through it with the EIDL, with the PPP. It hasn't been a nightmare, but it's just been like, no one knows the rules. No one knows what's going on. And that's part of the reason why we brought you on to help. I mean, not that you know everything either, but you're at least helping answer a lot of these questions. And I spoke for the PPP, I spoke to 3 different banks, and each one of them gave me a different amount on what my loan would be.
Yes.
And so, of course, I went with the one, fortunately, which is hooked up to my business bank account. But the others kind of undervalued how much I needed, because some banks took the 401k contributions that were being made. Other banks took the rent and electricity into account. Other banks only took strictly payroll into account. So it's like you said, the banks are even calculating these differently.
Yeah, I mean, they rolled out a program that didn't exist, and they tried to do it in a very, very short period of time without a lot of guidance. So people started making their own interpretations, and I think that was a shortfall in rolling out that program. But I will say, the bottom line is they got the program out, they got those PPPs funded from that first round, or they're still funding, finalizing the funding for the first round, and they're going through the second round. That's pretty quick. So I think overall, it was a pretty rapid response. It certainly wasn't quick enough for a lot of us. We went from business as usual to wondering how we're going to stay in business overnight, right? And just knowing that there was some sort of support and safety net helped, but the fact that there wasn't a lot of definitive guidance really kind of provides us a lot of anxiety, because we don't really know what the rules are.
Can you talk to our listeners for a minute about the EIDL grant?
Yeah, I didn't actually go through this process myself, but I talked to a number of people and some clients that have gone through that process. When you apply for the EIDL, you're actually applying directly on SBA.gov. And the EIDL is an emergency disaster loan, right? You can make application. You have to provide a lot more information. And typically, they're going to make an advance towards maybe a larger potential loan. And that advance may be something that may be forgiven, or it offsets what's forgiven under the payroll protection program. So if you actually think about this, this is actually one of those programs where you can do both, the PPP and the EIDL. The EIDL is a 7A loan under the normal 7A loan program, and it will provide capital up to a significant dollar amount for your business to kind of help you through this process. So, but it's typically going to be at a rate that's going to be under 4%, and the term of that loan is going to be over a much longer period of time. So it's different than the PPP, but it's something that's going to provide a much higher dollar value if you become eligible for it. And if nothing else, you'll get maybe a smaller advance against that potential loan. Even if you're refused for the larger amount, that smaller advance is something that may be forgiven.
Well, I can tell you I applied for both the PPP and the EIDL. So my S Corp, given that I have payroll on that went to the PPP. Now my LLC, there's no payroll in there. So I applied for the EIDL there. Now, what I don't know, and maybe you do, I don't have any employees. It's two partners, like I mentioned earlier, my father and me, my father owning 10%. So do we count, do partners count as employees? Because they did lower that grant. Initially, it was just $10,000 flat in grant money. And then because of how many people applied, they changed the policy and said, you'll be getting $1,000 per employee.
That was the EIDL?
Yes, the EIDL. Yep.
Yeah. The EIDL program it's different. And, what I understand is they're actually looking at partnerships in some ways differently than they are if it was a small business, with employees and with capital requirements and things like that. So it could be that, they just put you in that bucket of businesses that they really don't want to provide a lot of money to. I had a colleague of mine that applied for an EIDL. They got one of the businesses he has is an IT business. The other business is a brewery or distillery business. And he applied in the name of the distillery and got like a $2 million, emergency grant. And they forwarded him, I think, an advance of $11,000. So it really depends on the business and the background of the business and what they're doing. I'm not exactly sure how they're making those, what that criteria or difference is between your business and his business, other than, his business has probably much higher capital requirements than like a real estate business. Right.
Yeah. I think and this goes back to the whole, when you talked about freelancers are freelancers, independent contractors can apply for unemployment. I think one of the problems is that people just don't know. Like, even if they, like you said, oh yeah, you're eligible for unemployment right now through this special COVID relief unemployment program. So, okay, now people heard that. Well, what do they do next? Like, who do they get in touch with? How do they apply? Where do they go? Like, there's just been a lot of confusion, not just with the COVID and with the virus stuff, but even before all of this, there's just been a lot of confusion. I think that's adding to the frustration of people in this country.
Yeah, like I said, we're kind of trying to figure out how we can stay in business because things changed overnight. And the fact that we don't have information that we can rely on, the story is always changing, that provides a lot of anxiety, right? And trying to figure out, well, so what should I believe? Where should I go for information? That's why we've really tried to go to the source documents. That's why I read most of the CARES Act and why we did our webinars. We wanted to have the right information out there, based on our reading of the law. I'm not an attorney, but I'm, I did take a master's program in employee benefits law. I understand how to read the legislation, but I also know that in our legislative process, when they pass a law, the agencies or the departments like the Internal Revenue Service, they make up the specific rules and they make them up based on what they read the law to be. So I can make an interpretation, but it's really the Internal Revenue Service or it's the Treasury Department and the Small Business Administration that's going to determine specifically how these programs are implemented. So we can do the best in reading the information and trying to get out the facts, but these agencies are actually who are going to decide how this is actually done.
Wayne, how can our listeners watch your webinars?
If they go to blog.amdgservices.com,
blog.amdgservices.com. Awesome. Well, Wayne
yes.
Titus,
Look for the COVID-19 resources page underneath that blog.
Awesome. Wayne Titus, founder of AMDG Financial and AMDG Business Advisory Services. Check out his websites, WayneBTitus3.com and AMDGservices.com. His book, best-selling, #1, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Well-Being. It's definitely a book that you want to check out during these times. He's, like I said, #1 best-selling author. And what a great interview. This is the longest interview we've had, most number of episodes that we've had, because you've just been a wealth of information on topics that people want to learn about, but they're just kind of afraid because they don't understand it. And they think that they don't have the degree or the expertise to understand it. So thanks a lot for joining us. Any final thoughts?
Naresh and Adam, it was a pleasure talking with you about these important things today. And I just want to say that I'm hopeful that everybody can kind of make it through this rough patch. Good luck. And please let me know if I can help.
Awesome. Wayne B Titus III, thanks for joining us on the Work From Home Show. Check us out at www.workfromhomeshow.com. All of Wayne's episodes are up there, as well as all of our previous episodes. Write us a review on any podcasting platform. We're everywhere: Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We'll send you a nice freebie if you send us a screenshot of your review. hello@workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any follow-up questions for Wayne, you can contact him through the websites we gave, or just contact us, hello@workfromhomeshow.com, and we will be sure to forward that message over to Wayne so you can get in touch with him, or so he can get back in touch with you. So Wayne Titus, thanks again for coming on the show. And to all our listeners, until next time, keep on working from home.